Today we are with Greta Rosler and we're welcoming her to the Healthcare Rule Breakers studio. Greta is an experienced nurse leader with a background in direct care nursing leadership, patient experience leadership, and a nurse leader professional development. She is the founder, CEO, and principal of Radius Leaders, a nurse leader development partnership company she started in 2017. Since then, she has offered nurse leaders customized programs, facilitated learning, coaching, and mentoring that enables their success at organizations around the globe. This work has resulted in organizational reductions in nurse and leader turnover, improved patient perceptions of care and outcomes, improved employee engagement, and most importantly, improved nurse leader confidence and fulfillment. Greta serves as a subject matter expert for multiple companies and nonprofit organizations in the patient experience and healthcare engagement space and has authored numerous articles on nursing professionalism, leadership, and skills training. She is currently pursuing her PhD and plans to study nurse leaders' perceptions of self efficacy and correlations to best practices, such as nurse leader rounding. She's an active volunteer in her community, supporting individuals with disabilities and advocating to create a more inclusive world. Hi, Greta. Thank you for joining us in the Healthcare
Hi.
Studio. We are so grateful to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm grateful.
I'm going to jump in, and we really just want to learn a little bit about you, who you are, what's Radius Leaders, kind of what you've been up to.
Okay, well, thank you both for having me. I feel like I'm having sort of like a pinch me moment, right? To be with two influencers in their own way. So I'm very grateful for that. So Radius is like my passion, and I started Radius in 2017 when it was sort of like by accident, right? I had done some presentations talking about some of the work I did at that time as a nurse manager, and I got some requests to continue those and to help people out in certain ways outside of my organization. And I started on the side. And then I started realizing through the work I was doing full time that the problems were the same in most places and that nurse leaders were at the center of them. And by the center of them, I mean fixing them. And so I recognized that this was a lot of burden on nurse leaders. I mean, I had felt it myself as a nurse manager for a number of departments, and there was no help. There was like, here's your keys, here's the phone, call me if you need me. And by the way, make sure you go out and round on every patient and fix all the problems. And I was like, okay. And you're both nodding because you've had this experience, I'm sure. And I started Radius sort of with that goal in mind, but I don't think at the time I really knew how much of an impact work like this could have. And so since then, we've really grown and developed certain programs and, have made our own models of how we approach certain problems that nurse leaders face. And it's been really fulfilling.
I love that so much. So I just want to say, Greta, I forever have followed you on LinkedIn. We have the exact same passion. So you're saying all the things that really resonate with me. So I know what it feels like to get out of bed every day and say, oh, this is my passion. I just want to go help these people succeed in their role. What's the one thing you love doing in your role more than anything? Because there's all the pieces of owning a business that are, it's not all just fun and glorious.
Mm-mm. No, it's not. Because, in this situation, I'm a lot of the pieces that in a bigger organization might all have their own role.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I love and what keeps me going, even despite that, which can feel like a hardship at times,
Yeah.
what keeps me going is the idea that the work we're doing gives nurse leaders confidence that they can keep going. And, I'm so nerdy. I have goosebumps just saying that. But we were doing some rounding workshops this week. And when I look at the eval results and it says, some sort of question, I'm not going to word it just right, but about, I can see how nurse leader rounding connects to and really fulfills my purpose as a nurse leader. Now that I had this work, 100% say yes. I can now feel like I can round confidently and efficiently. 100% say yes. So that stuff to me is what keeps me going. That's my favorite part, is knowing that, wow, I was a small part of just empowering all these nurse leaders to go out and own it and really do something that only they can do in the hospital with the impact that we want them to have.
I got the goosebumps too, because I'm thinking, as a leader, you're thinking, your initial thought, I think for most people, definitely for me, was like, one more thing. Like, I have all of these other things, the budget and the people and the schedule, and to add rounding, and to hear them say, wow, like, I understand how this is purposeful and gives meaning, and I can do it efficiently. It's not one more thing. I love that. You gave me goosebumps.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you.
I feel like that's the general been the general theme of all the people that we've got to interact and just hear that passion pour through. It always gives me like that little chill of, oh my gosh, people get to do what they love. So I do have a question, just kind of a follow up. So you and I have been connected, and I've considered you one of my mentors over the last 2 years as I've transitioned from working in the hospital to building a business. So I have a few questions. So when you're looking at, one of the things that I think we all want to know is, when you're teaching nurse leaders, you're teaching them about rounding, how are you also helping them with managing their time and being able to kind of pull all that together? Because that was one of the things that I think about even now. Like, I feel like time management is such a joke for a founder, that you're just trying to like figure out, just, okay, can I tread water? So I really think that I would love to hear, and I think maybe some of our listeners would love to hear, like, how you help with that aspect of all of the helping them balance all of the things.
So that's a great question, because as I always say, you can't manage what you don't have, right? If you don't have money, you can't manage it. You're stuck, you're having a problem, but you can't manage it. And so what we do, and it's really fruitful. What I really enjoy doing is, before we ever teach leaders, the ideal scenario, right, is before we ever teach leaders rounding. So like in our skilled nurse leader program, the foundation of that starts with a couple of things, but one of those things is what I call time ownership. And we created an evidence-based tool. I say evidence-informed. I'll say evidence-informed tool about how to assess your time, and where nurse leaders generally, and the evidence around it. There's lots of articles that say nurse leaders don't have any time, but when you really break it down, okay, what is the truest barrier? So we have this evidence-informed tool, using the evidence that says how nurse leaders feel like they're spending their time and what sucks up all their time and energy. And we have them self-assess that. And then we start incrementally asking them a choice about a 15% improvement that they could control. There are certain things you couldn't control, but we get them there, and then we continue to revisit that. And it's really incredible to hear how those little 15% changes make a huge difference in the long run. And it's not earth-shattering things that they do. It's I decided I'm not going to open email after X time, because then I just end up having to read them anyway. Again, it takes me twice the time. Or I decided, the way I'm managing my calendar isn't working, so I'm going to go back to this other type of calendar I used to use. So that's really how we help them, is we step back, have them assess. And to be honest, like, you both probably know this, I struggle to manage my own time. And I say to them all the time, I'll say to them, now listen, when I was in your shoes, I never had time. And I felt like when I get another job, I'll have more time. And the time crunch changes. And then I had a different job, and I never had any time. And then I worked from home for a different job, and I never had any time. And now I'm my own boss, and I never have any time. So who's the problem? And I'm like, I tell them, get out your mirror. I always give nurse leaders these mirrors. I'm like, get out your mirror and take a look at yourself, because while there are tons of circumstances out of your control, you can control more. We've been just kind of like put into this mill of like meetings and this and that. We just don't have any time, and that's just the way it is. But there are things that we can control. So that's what I do. That was a long-winded way to tell you that's how we do it.
I love that. I'm always saying Michael Jackson, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. And all these things you can teach them, but the truth is, it's an inside job. Like, yes. I can give you all these tips and tricks and tools, and some work for you and some work for me, but it's really about how do you take ownership. I love that you called it time ownership of where I'm going to spend the most valuable possession that I have.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They have to accept it and own it. And it's, there's always going to be things, but like, even if owning it means I have to ask for help, then,
Yes.
My
that's what
God, you said it. That was gold right there. Because that's exactly where I was going. I was like, I mean, that's my biggest thing. I think we all think of as nurse leaders, we all think, oh, if we ask for help, we're showing that we can't manage. We are showing that we can't lead. We're showing that we are weak. And I think we do have to like take part of that in our time management strategy and know like what our own capacity is, what things we have to say no to, what things we personally need to say yes to, and what we need to give up in order to be able to say yes to those things. And I think a lot of that comes from evaluating yourself and really just kind of building in those strategies for yourself of this is how I know what my capacity is, these are the things that belong to me, these are the things that I need to ask some other great human being to assist me with.
Yep, that's
So
key.
that was total gold, so I love it.
Good. I'm glad. That's probably the only golden thing I'm going to say all day.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
I highly doubt that. Okay, so I have one more question that I'm just curious about. So in your journey, in your transition, so you mentioned like these job transitions that you've had, and I feel like that's going to resonate with a ton of people because it resonated with me, right? Like I had one job, I felt like, oh, I can't, get home on time. I can't get out of the office. I can't do this. And I mean, it's kind of bad now too because I have a home office. So then I think like, oh, I can go home and I'll do this. And then I get in my office and I get in that mode and I'm like, you know, you're going back at it full speed again. So how is it that you have taken, what have you learned from those transitions? What's the biggest takeaway that you've had from those transitions, and how have you used that in your role to building your company? How do you channel that?
Well, the biggest takeaway I've had is kind of what we just touched on, which is that I am part of the problem and the solution to everything. And nothing has made that more clear than when I'm running my own business.
Yeah.
And that no matter what role I've had, every role has unique challenges that honestly are equally as daunting as the next role. It's just they're different. And so what I've learned is to identify that this isn't just an uphill journey to get to the top. It is like a journey over mountains of up and down, and to accept the highs of it and to accept that the lows are meant to teach me something or push me to a new level and get me thinking differently, and to really trust my instinct in those ways. So I've had to really learn, like, no matter what job you have, Greta, there's going to be tons of problems, and you have a role in them, and it's natural. So learn through it and push past it. And obviously, being your own boss, you really don't have a choice. So that's what I've learned. But honestly, when you are a nurse manager, you don't have a choice. You do. You could quit, but most nurse managers want to be a nurse manager. They like their job if they can push past those highs and lows and push past the notion that the low is bad. And learn through it.
I
I
think
love.
I was gonna say I think that's a good way to view it. Go ahead, Crystal.
Well, it reminded me of something that my mentor told me, early on. And she said, appreciate the journey. And, you've read appreciate the journey, not the destination. And I think it's just part of the human experience to wonder what's next. Where am I going to be? What's going? And when you can find that place of acceptance of it's always going to be this. And you said something earlier. So all this kind of integrated in my mind as you were talking. It's that learning to accept where you are and be present in it. But the thing you said earlier, you go to these people and you talk to them, they all are experiencing the same challenges, the same issues, like they're not unique. So you and I work in the same kind of space, we're in front of the same kind of people. And I imagine we both hear it, if nothing else, thank you that I know I'm not alone. I have the same problem and I can lean on my network. They're going to help me get through it. And those that embrace that are so successful.
Yes.
But I'm just curious in this time and space. So we're in, the last quarter of 2024. What are the top things? I'm curious if we're hearing the same things that are the main issues for leaders today. And for me, I'm seeing, I'm always hesitant to say this because I do think our frontline workers are still experiencing some issues with burnout and resilience, and they are going through it. But I've started to witness a recovery space for them, and I'm not seeing that so much for the leaders. And then a lot of that is related to span of control and the things that we are asking them to do. So I'm curious if that's the same thing you're seeing and hearing, so people will know they're not alone. And, or are there other things that are like the major challenges in the world today? So our audience can say, oh, me too.
Well, that's a great question. So there's two things. I think there's two main things that I see, and you're right, Crystal. Before the pandemic, these things existed, and now it just seems like they're amplified. So the first thing is that my colleague and I were just talking about this the other day. You know, I have this whole like campaign, save the nurse leaders, save the nurse leaders. And one of my team members brought to me how overwhelmed nurse leaders are by the demands that are put on them outside of nursing. And while lots of other disciplines are working hard, a lot of the output of their discipline falls back onto nurse leaders to fix. Yeah. And, you know, I kind of said, I think maybe through our conversation, I think maybe saving the nurse leaders isn't about nurse leaders at all. It's about the whole system. So that's the one thing I see over and over. The other thing I'll say that I see over and over, and I think the biggest challenge is we've had this turnover rapidly of staff, but also of leaders, and they are ill-equipped for what they're going to need to do on the daily. And I don't mean the budget. I mean talking to an employee about performance. I mean talking to a patient about service recovery, dealing with an interdisciplinary team member about a collaboration need or issue. That's what I see as the biggest gap, is they're put in these roles because they're a good nurse. And I mean, this has been said a million times, but it's still the biggest problem, is that they don't have the skills they need. And it's not their fault. It's that, and they want them. And if they get them, they thrive.
Oh, man. That's why they're my favorite. They are hungry for information. And there's so many of us doing this work. And I get asked often, we talked about this before we started, you know, there's so many people in this space. It's not a competition. There are more leaders to serve than there are of us to go around. And so thank you for doing this work and preaching that. We've got to help these leaders because they hold it all together. They really do. And it's just a privilege to be in this space. So thank you for doing the work.
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you for doing your work, both of you.
Alyssa the hustler.
Yeah, I have a lot of fun with, you know, in the staffing world, it definitely looks different, but, you know, it's one of those things that no matter what, like the nurse leaders are pulled 1,000 different directions, but if they're not staffed, they can't do anything. So that's really how I drew out to that world, was like, oh, we got to put quality people out there and we got to do it faster. So I loved getting to do that and helping them with like some relief, you know, at least in the short term. However, we have, you know, kind of had the best conversation. Greta dropped some straight up gold on us today. So with that being said, Greta, we do have a healthcare rule breakers question for you. So if you could break one rule in healthcare, what would that rule be?
The rule in healthcare that I would break right now, and it's specific to nursing, is that competency is derived by education. Meaning, we have more gold. Okay, I said two golden things today. Nursing has like suffered from this idea that nurse leaders that have come before us have started this amazing journey to elevate nursing as a profession, not just a vocation. It is a profession. It is a science. And to do that, we obviously need advanced education. We need advanced degrees. We need certificates. We need all the things. Those things do not equate to competency, because competency involves behaviors and skills. And those things come from partnership, direct learning, and mentorship. So that would be the rule I would break in nursing, is we have to disassociate these two things. The advanced education is necessary, but there's a whole other part we're forgetting. There's my rule.
Oh, that was good. That was platinum. That was better than good.
Wow, you guys are really like propping me up here. Thank you. Thank
Okay,
you.
so I just want to piggyback on that. So I too agree. I mean, I have been on my own journey to evaluate the letters behind my name. So we always have the premise of alphabet soup in nursing, and what do the certifications mean, and what value do they have? While I'm a big proponent of yes, go get the certification and you can validate the knowledge that you have, I have had some struggles internally with, okay, I got this certification, but how do I continue to measure my growth? How do I measure my growth? Because I don't, you do CEs and you do those things to maintain the certification, but I'm not necessarily like putting together a portfolio of my nurse executive competencies and
Mhm.
seeing how, okay, I got this certification 5 years ago and this was the level I was at, but now I've grown exponentially through the education and the things that I've done to maintain this or to become this person who deserves this certification. So I've been on that same little quest, and just kind of how do you use those to measure your growth or see your growth, and be able to really compare, like, okay, this is what I look like as a novice leader, and this is what these roles or these experiences provided. And I kind of have tend to interweave that with the lattice of how you grow instead of the ladder. And you
Mhm.
had mentioned earlier the ups and downs and the highs and lows, and I think that has fit with what I've been consuming and reading lately about how you don't have to just climb in one vertical. You can, go side to side, and you can get experiences in different things. And I think we're seeing that more and more, as nurses, nurse leaders transition into roles that are, even materials management or facilities based or other roles like that help with supply chain. I find that very interesting, but I think that's part of that lattice of, okay, you're gaining a
Yes.
more whole view of everything that goes into this complex system that we're working in. So
Yeah.
Yes. Like all these complex pieces and how they intersect and overlap are really what build competency when a nurse leader is at the center of them and working through them. I can't tell you how many times I've been at a conference and a nurse leader will come up to me and say, I'll say, we'll be making small talk and they'll say, I just got my DMP. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Or I just got certified, as a nurse executive or something. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's good for you. That's a hard test. And then they'll say, okay, now I have this one employee that I can't figure out what to do with her. And I stand there and I'm like in awe of this very well credentialed, highly intelligent leader who still needs a lot of support in these ways, as many leaders do. So it just has really opened my eyes to the idea that we in nursing have done ourselves a disservice by not acknowledging that both are necessary and that there's a disconnect.
Oh, I love this so much. And the way that, because also we all are pursuing our doctorates or have completed a terminal degree. We have certification. So clearly there's value. We know that
Yes.
there's value. But you're so right. It goes beyond that. And I'm a huge sports fan. So I remember listening to Peyton Manning talk one time, and it was, at the height of his career. He was like, even the best of us need a coach. Even the MVP of the Super Bowl still needs a coach. And so I love that it's not just come to this program and you're magically going to have it, take this test and you've magically got it. We've got to keep providing that mentorship and that growth. But I'm going to go back to that's an inside job because, you got to seek that out
Right.
and be aware. And
Absolutely.
I love that you differentiated the two. That's a great one. I was pondering this morning, like, I wonder what Greta's going to answer this question. And my initial response, which we always laugh, I said, Alyssa said, what rule do you want to break? And I said, all of them, because that's why we're doing this. But I was really thinking about it. I was like, we have to equip leaders. We have got to stop making it acceptable. And it's not just a one time I cross this off this box, now you're competent. It's truly a lifelong journey. We still have mentors and coaches. And so I'm
Yes.
just grateful for both of you. And Alyssa, who I said she's the hustler, she's the one believes in, pushes. So just so grateful for this conversation, for the work that you both do. It's awesome.
Thank you. This is like, thank you. I agree, Crystal. This is like filling my cup. This is a lovely, maybe our listeners won't realize, but it's a Friday and we're probably all burnt in our own ways. And this is really filling my cup and helping me remember why we do this. So thank you.
Okay, so one thing that we do love to be able to share, Greta, if someone wanted to contact you, they wanted to talk to you, can you share like how they might be able to do that?
Yeah, sure. So the easiest way to get me, honestly, the way most people would find me is LinkedIn. Um, and you could go to our website, which is radiusleaders.com, and there's a contact me form, and I would get that too through the channel there. But most people would reach out on LinkedIn, and my email. Is it like weird to say my email on the, like it's Greta at radiusleaders.com. It's pretty straightforward. So any of those three ways, but LinkedIn is usually the most straightforward.
And is your handle on LinkedIn, is it just your name?
Oh boy. See, this is where Alyssa's a hustler and I have no idea. I think if they just search me up by my name, Greta Rossler, I'll come up.
Okay.
Yep.
All
And
right.
I want to just recommend, if you listen to this and you are going to connect, or even if you don't need to talk to her personally, just search her, because you can watch the work that's going on out there. And I get gold from you all the time. It's not just one time today.
Thank you so much, Crystal. Likewise. So thank you.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming to the studio with us today.
Thank you.
Yes. Good to spend time.
Likewise.